Hello, welcome to Crimes, Lies, and Alibis. We are back with the second day of the Vallow Daybell trial. We're almost done with day 2, and depending on what time it is, I will probably go right into day 3. I have it right where it kicks off the following day. For those of you who don't know why she's here in Arizona when she had been in the hands of the Correction Institute, whatever, I don't know the name of it, in Idaho, but she is an inmate in the Idaho prison. She was extradited to Arizona for the conspiracy charges that were placed against her in the death of her husband, her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, on July 11th, 2000. What year was that? 19, I believe. Um, he was shot twice by her brother, Alex Cox. It was supposedly self-defense. This was a couple of months before Tylee and JJ were reported missing or had disappeared. So there was just this chain of events that occurred. Lori basically got rid of her whole family for Chad Daybell. I know that's me projecting my feelings, but that's what it seems to be, that she got rid of her family to follow Chad Daybell and his word of, religious leaders are sometimes interesting characters, but I'm trying to not get into too many, trying to keep to the facts here for the most part. I try. So this is for educational purposes only, for seeking justice. This is for adults only, and viewer discretion is advised. There's a lot of delicate topics that come up in these videos, so let's crack at it, shall we? And also, I'm sorry if there's ads. I'm working on premium, but everything costs money. I'm getting there. Please like and subscribe so that I can help build my following. I am brand new at this. I've been at it a couple of days, so here we go.
I'm going to put up 15 first. In the diagram, we had seen a number over in this area. What was that?
The item should be marking the baseboard, and there is a bullet strike in the baseboard.
All right, I'm putting up 23 here, and then I'm going to put up 24. What are we looking at here?
So what you're looking at is the actual bullet strike where it peeled away a portion of the baseboard, but remained embedded in the baseboard.
So I'm going to put up, as we kind of go closer, 24, 25, 26. Did you eventually show in 27 that you guys pulled back some of that board to get to show what was embedded in there?
Correct. And at some point, we were needing to recover that projectile.
Okay.
I think it's also really important to note that Lori did not want this guy testifying. She was adamantly against it. She didn't view him as a professional witness because I don't know why she was questioning his credentials, but she was. His job at that time was to go in and evaluate a scene and kind of detail what was seen. We did get a visual of the layout of the house, where Charles's body was, where his ball cap was, where the bat had landed, where he laid. I think there was another couple of things on the ground. They found bullet casings. One of the big reasons why Lori did not like this guy is because it was his opinion that Charles' fatal shot was when he was already on the ground. So he was shot twice. One was in the abdomen, like upper part of the abdomen. And the second time he was shot directly in the heart. So his belief is that the abdomen was the first shot and the heart was the second. Execution, kind of. the idea that the prosecution has been delivering is that this incident was deliberate, that Lori purposefully detained Charles. She created a problem, and this problem was she took his cell phone from him. She demanded to know who he had been talking to, even though they were separated, they had not been living together. She was the one who alleged that she wanted the divorce, and so she kept his phone from him, and this is what spiraled the whole situation. And it is alleged that this was all done on purpose because Lori wanted him dead so that she could collect on the $1 million life insurance policy, and she would get $4,000 a month as a supportive parent for their son JJ. She had a certain expectation. She had a certain lifestyle she liked living. She wanted to go back to living in Hawaii. So that was pretty enticing. She wanted to be with Chad Daybell. That money was enticing because if she and Charles divorced, he could change it in their divorce that she wouldn't get the $1 million life insurance policy, which, funnily enough, she didn't get anyway, because in March, again, this happened in July, in March, she didn't know that he changed the policy to where she was no longer the beneficiary. And my guess is March is probably when they had separated, because they were together for, I think, 14 years. So it's my guess that he probably changed the beneficiary when they separated in March. But she was anticipating getting that money. She had text Chad and said, well, I don't get the life insurance policy, but that's okay. I'll still get $4,000 a month from Social Security for JJ. So that's a pretty compelling reason to have someone killed. But if they're separated, I don't know that she would still have gotten that money from Social Security. I mean, it still would have been, I don't know, an enticing reason to have him killed. And, Lori is all about her religious whatever, and she had said that Charles was no longer Charles. He had been taken over by a demon named Ned, and that her husband was no longer there. That was just the other justification in her mind, and why she told people that Charles was not Charles anymore.
And so in 28, does this reflect, now you've kind of photographed what it looked like when you first saw it, and then as you peeled it back, and the actual bullet or projectile that was removed from there?
Correct.
All right. And 29 show that bullet from a different angle?
Yes.
When you were looking at this, and I'm going to put 30 and 31, was there actually some sort of white paint transfer on part of that?
There's a little bit of transfer of material to the nose of the bullet, yes.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 243 and 245, or sorry, 243 and 235. Detective, do you recognize what those are?
Yes, I do.
What are those?
This would be the section of baseboard that we removed from the wall, as well as the projectile that we had removed from the baseboard.
Okay, and I'm going to put up 34 here. Does that show sort of after you pulled out that section of that baseboard?
Yes, after it was cut out.
Okay. And then it's the projectile that you recovered in there? From that location, the other exhibit?
The other exhibit is the projectile that was recovered from there, yes.
State will move to admit 243 and 235.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
You said 243 and 245?
35.
Oh.
243 and 235.
It's ordered admitting 243 and 235.
If I can have my paralegal go retrieve that. So, let me put up, to give us again a different perspective, 17 here. We've talked about, as you're kind of working your way down, you told us you started with the hat, then you went over to the baseboard, and then you went back to the west wall.
Yes.
And so we see in this photograph, Exhibit 17, what you have marked as item 3. What was that?
That was the baseball bat.
I'm going to show Exhibit 35. Is that a closer up of that bat?
Yes, it is.
Were photographs taken of the sort of edge of the bat itself?
The
The
fat edge, I guess.
the fat edge?
Here,
Let's
I
call
don't
it
know
that.
nomenclature of the bat, so yeah,
Not the handle. How's that?
yes.
When you were looking at this, were you looking for any blood? And I'm going to put up 37, 38, 39, or any biological material?
We were looking for visible evidence, yes.
Okay. Did you observe any yourself?
I did not.
And did the edge look pristine and clean to you, visibly?
Visibly, I did not see any sort of biological evidence on it.
Did you note any biological evidence anywhere on the bat that was visible to you?
I did not.
If my paralegal can approach with 249. Do you recognize what 249 is?
Yes, I do.
And is that the bat that we have seen in these photos marked as item number 2 that we see here in Exhibit 35?
Yes.
State will move to admit 249, Your Honor.
Any objection? 248 and 249 are admitted.
So that was item number 3. I'm going to put up Exhibit 40. Do we see a placard there for number 4?
Yes.
And what was item number 4? And I'm going to put up Exhibit 42 here.
It is a full metal jacket projectile.
And in 43, does that show a different angle of that projectile?
Yes.
So this projectile was recovered to the east, maybe northeast of Charles Vallow?
Yes.
And was there any visible damage to this projectile?
There was some deformation to the projectile.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 239. Do you recognize 239?
Yes, I do.
And what is 239?
This would be what's identified in the picture as item number 4, the projectile that was found close to the body.
State will move to admit 239.
Objection?
No objection.
239 is admitted.
When you are photographing the scene, are you, again, we know this is after fire has been there.
Yes.
Were you present when fire was there?
I believe their engine was still there when I arrived on scene, but they were not inside.
So were you present when they were working on Mr. Vallow in the home?
No,
So do you know whether or not they had moved this projectile at all?
I do not.
When you were looking at Mr. Vallow himself, I'm going to put up 41, did you notice something on his left hand?
On the left hand, yes.
What did you notice on his left hand?
Substance consistent with apparent blood.
When you were looking at Mr. Vallow, did you note any other blood on his left arm?
I did not see any.
And when you are looking at Mr. Vallow, are you looking at the rest of his body to see if you noted any blood on his right arm?
Correct. I did not see any on the right arm. I did not manipulate the body until the medical examiner showed up.
So visibly, as he laid there in that supine position on the back with his arms out, what you were able to see, did you see any other blood like we observed on his left hand anywhere else?
On his chest, there was a little bit of blood, but on his extremities, I did not see any.
And so when we talk about his chest, is this the blood that we see here, sort of?
Above and below the pads.
Okay. Did the blood to Mr. Vallow's left hand stand out to you in any way?
Yes, it was interesting that it's just on that one particular part, but it's not completely surprising.
Was there any blood on the floor around where his hand was?
No.
So although we've heard of blood pooling underneath him, there was no blood around his hand as it laid there.
Correct.
So going back again to Exhibit 17, we've now talked about 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct? Do we see
Yes.
a placard number 5 there?
Yes.
What was placard number 5? And I'm going to put up Exhibit 45 now.
It is a shell casing.
And I'm going to put up 46 to be closer of it. And 47. Were you able to determine what caliber that was?
Yes, it belonged to a .45 automatic pistol.
Okay. Now, as a police officer, do you have a semi-automatic pistol yourself?
At least one.
Okay. And I guess as a reserve officer, do you still have some?
I'm not a reserve officer. I'm just retired. But yes, I still possess firearms.
All right. So in terms of a semi-automatic handgun and seeing this type of casing, can you tell us, when you fire a gun, where does this come from? What is that?
So in this particular image, we are looking at what's commonly called a head stamp. That's going to be the opposite end of where the actual projectile would be inserted into the casing. The circular ring that you see in the head stamp there is actually what's called the primer, and that's what the firing pin hits to initiate the primer charge, which ignites the powder and then sends the projectile through the barrel.
So if I put up 48 here, we have a projectile that goes through the barrel. What is this item here? It's casing.
So this is what's left of the cartridge. So it's the casing. This is what holds the powder charge, it holds the primer, and it holds the projectile all in one unit until it's initiated with the firing pin striking the primer. After the charge starts the projectile down the barrel, then the most semi-automatic weapons will actually, the slide will start moving back to the rear, and there's a piece of the slide called an extractor that goes around that back rim of the projectile there around the head stamp, and it pulls it backwards out of the chamber. And then it completes the cycle going all the way to the rear where it hits what's called an ejector, and that kicks the casing out of the gun and readies it to go forward, stripping a new cartridge off the magazine, if there is one, and loading that into the chamber ready for the next shot.
So when you fire the gun, projectile goes out the barrel and this casing gets kicked out.
Correct.
So I'm going to go back again to Exhibit 17 where we see 5. And I'm going to put up Exhibit 49. To the south of 5 here, did you find another casing?
Yes.
Is that what we see in Exhibit 49 and 50 as placard 6?
Yes, it is.
So were those located in the generally in the same location?
Fairly close to each other.
When a casing is ejected from a gun, do they just plop down and stay right where they landed?
No, there are many different types of firearms out there, so the casings can eject in different directions. Some will, or most will eject out to the right. Some will go farther back towards the right, some will go forward, some will go center, some actually kick higher up in the middle. It really depends on the manufacturer, the process, how the person's holding the firearm. So there are a lot of things about it, but there's usually sufficient energy designed in it so that it kicks the casing out so it doesn't interfere with the feeding of the next cartridge.
In your experience firing guns, can casings bounce or roll or move after they are ejected?
Yes.
Item that we see is number 6 and number 50 there. What caliber casing was that?
It's a little blurry.
Do you recall if it was the same 45 caliber as the other one?
They were both 45 caliber.
I can have approach with 238 and 240. Do you recognize 238 and 240?
Yes.
What are those?
These are the casings recovered from the main room where the body was.
What we saw as 5 and 6 in the exhibits?
That's correct.
State will move to admit 238 and 240.
Any objection to 248 and 240?
No objection.
248 and 240 are admitted.
238 and 240.
Oh, I'm sorry, 238 and 240? Okay, they're admitted.
Now, do the police move the body when you're processing the scene? Do you go around and move Mr. Vallow around?
No,
Do you have to wait for someone from the medical examiner's office to come do that?
that is correct.
Sort of the body is their responsibility?
Yes,
Are you present while they're doing that?
absolutely.
And are you looking for any other evidence that may be on, around, underneath Mr. Vallow?
Correct.
In this case, did the medical examiner's office come and remove Mr. Vallow's remains?
Yes, they did.
Once his remains were removed, did you document by photographing, we see here in 53, the blood that was left behind?
Yes, typically we would call this the void image to show what it looked like after the body has been removed.
Now, is the blood been moved somewhat by the body itself being moved?
Correct. Part of the process is the medical examiner's investigator will manipulate the body by rolling it from one side or the other to get a good look at the side that's not visible with how it was laying. And then they'll work on manipulating the body into the bag for transport.
So looking at the void or the blood pool that we see here, has it been altered somewhat from what we saw or observed while Mr. Vallow's body was there due to the movement of his remains?
That would be safe to say, yes.
Okay. Did you and other officers clean up that blood pool?
Yes.
And in doing so, did you observe anything on the floor?
Yes. Underneath, well, once the blood was cleared off, we could actually see a defect in the wooden floor that was consistent with the projectile strike.
All right, I've put up Exhibit 56. There's a placard number 13 there. Is that far away so we can see the location of where that is in perspective to the room?
Yes.
Having seen Mr. Vallow's remains in the room and then having them removed, were you able to determine approximately where this defect that we see marked as 13 was located in relation to Mr. Vallow's body?
Yes, it would have been consistent with being under his left shoulder.
Did you
I was a second too late with the pausing. I wanted to go back because this is the first time I've seen photos from this angle, because there is only one camera allowed in the courtroom. I'm afraid to go back because I don't want it to get a stupid commercial ad. If it does, it does. Okay. So here are his shoes. That was shown on that diagram. So this is how narcissistic Lori is. Okay. Notice that they're living here. They've just moved. But that's not why this room is empty. This room is empty because Lori wanted a place she could dance. See all the mirrors? So I'm not sure what the checkered part is leading to, because I know the kitchen is closer to where the camera is. That could be the other end, because there's two entrances to the kitchen, but Charles was near the kitchen. So I'm not sure if that hallway is where the bedrooms are and that's where Tylee came from. Because yesterday in my video, after I got done with the first day, I went to those interviews between Tylee and right after this happened. She was speaking to law enforcement. I don't know. I didn't catch the lady's name. And so is Lori. And according to Tylee, it sounded like Alex was already out there when she joined the argument, so to speak. And it was Tylee who had the bat for protective measures, I guess, when she was living with her uncle for a time. She just felt better sleeping with the bat next to her, which is interesting. But I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the photo, the diagram. But this is the first time I'm seeing this room. But that's why it's empty, because Lori wanted somewhere where she could dance and watch herself dance, I guess. Strange. But that's why the room has no furniture. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yes, it would have been consistent with being under his left shoulder.
Did you take closer up photos of that defect?
Yes.
I'm going to put up 59 that shows that placard. Is this what you were talking about?
That is correct.
How did you, well, let me ask you this. Did you look at the rest of the floor to see if there were anything else that looked like that?
Yes, that was a consideration, so we did look at the rest of the floor.
So you went through that whole room to see if you found any similar type of defects on it?
Correct.
Did you?
No.
So this was the only one that looked like that?
Yes.
And I'm going to put up 58. So we see other defects in the ground. What made this different?
The size of it, the directionality, the fact that it was directly underneath the shoulder where we observed an exit wound, and the fact that there was a projectile found on the floor in proximity to this defect.
Was it, let me ask you this. As a person who has processed crime scenes, fired guns themselves, did it appear to you consistent with a bullet strike?
Yes, it did.
And what were you basing that on?
The way the indentation is and how it tapers up, coming away from the body in the same direction that the projectile was located.
Did you and other detectives remove that piece of wood?
Yes, with great pain, yes.
All right, putting up Exhibit 60. Is that to show the piece removed, and Exhibit 61 to show the actual piece?
Correct.
And did you write on it so that you would be able to later look at that piece and know how that fit into the puzzle?
Yes, it was important to make sure to establish directionality on that piece.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 240, oh, I'm sorry.
You don't want to? I do.
Oh, and by the way, whether Lori knows it or not, she has what we call a hot mic, to where even when she's not asking questions or objecting or whatever, she keeps her microphone on. So yesterday, or it might have been actually earlier that day, I think it was actually earlier in this day, one of the police officers, I think it was the police officer. I don't think it was the fire guy. It could have been the fire guy. I don't know. I'd have to go back. I think it was the second police officer. Heard her say, "We aren't getting invited to any pool parties anytime soon," or something along those lines, or "There goes us getting any pool party invites," because there was so much law enforcement and everything all over the place, and they had just moved into this neighborhood, which seems like a pretty lowbrow thing to say when your husband's just been killed by your brother. Like, when he said she made that comment about pool parties and the neighbors, you could hear Lori say, "What?" Like, she couldn't believe he heard that or took note of her saying that. She might have said that as in, "What?" Like, I don't remember saying that, but knowing Lori, she was shocked that he heard her say that, because that makes her look really bad. Well, there goes any pool party invites. Guess I'm not getting invited to that barbecue, or whatever. Like, I mean, that last part was me, but she was treating it like it was a joke. Like, it was something to crack jokes at. And, of course, law enforcement and first responders aren't going to take that very well. Like, lady, this is not, you have a child standing here. She's a minor. This is something that's her stepfather that's laying in there. It's just, even if she didn't like the man, it's still a stressful situation. It's not funny. It's not a joking matter. And I get that some people just process things differently than other people, and that's a coping mechanism. But this is Lori. It's not a coping mechanism. She's just a cold-hearted, shallow bitch. And I can say that because she's been found guilty of killing her 2 children.
I can have my paralegal approach with 244. Do you recognize 244?
I do.
And is that the actual piece of floor that was removed from 5531 South Four Peaks Place?
Yes.
State will move to admit 244.
Any objection? 244 is admitted.
And is that what then we see here in Exhibit 61?
It is.
Obviously, this is inside plastic, but this is the piece you're talking about.
Correct.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the rest of the house, and then eventually I'm going to come back to this. You told us that...
Would now be a good time to take our
Sure.
afternoon recess? Since we're close to 3, why don't we take our afternoon recess, stretch break, et cetera? Please remember the admonition. We'll resume in about 15 minutes.
All rise for the jury.
All right, I'm going to try and fast forward this. I hope I don't get any advertisements. It's hit or miss with law and crime. It was terrible yesterday. I was using the local news channel and it was terrible. Okay, it looks like they come back right around here. Guess I was a little bit too soon, but I guess in the meantime, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about Colby Ryan. He is the surviving son of Lori. It's believed by a lot of people that the only reason that Colby actually survived this ordeal was due to his being an adult. Charles also had 2 adult sons that were not living with him at the time. The other really horrible thing about this whole situation is Charles's family wasn't even informed properly that he had passed away. They found out because they had to go to Google it when one of his sons found out that he died. He was like, "Did you know that my dad died?" or whatever, and they ended up Googling and seeing that he was deceased. So Lori is such a kind-hearted person, was married to this man for 14 years, couldn't even be bothered to notify his family of Charles's passing. So that just goes to show the type of person that Lori Vallow is. And we don't have sound. Why don't we have sound? Hello, camera guy. We don't have sound. I don't even know if the closed captions are on, I believe. Yeah, it just hasn't brought back the sound yet. There is only one camera in the courtroom. That was one of the things that was a big deal to Lori. She claimed she didn't want to be the focus of their attention, but, you know, she loves the limelight, so I don't believe that for a second. All right, guy, we need this. There it is.
Here.
It took me
So there
complaining.
was again another bag, and more specifically, there was a pistol that was laying on the floor.
We start with 72 here. Was that just like a garbage bag with some clothes in it?
Yes.
So of more relevance to you was what was next to it?
Correct.
What did you find there? What is this orange thing there, and we see a whole lot of placard numbers.
Right, so the placard numbers are obviously identifying particular items that are going to be seized as evidence. That we have the orange bag with what appears to be a gun box inside, and then we have the pistol, and the 3 placards next to the pistol are specific for the pistol itself, the magazine from the pistol, and potentially the chambered round in the pistol.
Okay. So 74, is that a close-up of that pistol?
It is.
What kind of pistol was that?
Pardon?
What caliber was it?
It's a 45.
Is that the same caliber as the casings that you had found in the front room next to Charles?
Yes.
Does this show another angle of that pistol in 75?
Yes, looking at the top of the pistol.
When the pistol, as we see, is picked up in 76, the individual's wearing gloves. Why is that?
Again, to help preserve the evidence, in the event that DNA were to need to be done, we could articulate that we did not touch it with our bare hands to impart our DNA onto it.
Are you visually looking at this gun to see, and this is 77, if there is any visible biological evidence, blood on this gun?
Yes, we do look at them to help determine that.
And did you observe any biological evidence, any blood, or what appeared to be blood, on this handgun?
No, ma'am.
If you had observed that, would you have noted it and photographed it and documented it?
Yes.
Now, when you got this gun, was it loaded?
Yes.
And in 78 and 79, is that photographs of the magazine in the gun?
Correct.
So when we talk about the magazine, I'm going to go back to showing Exhibit 76. Where is that in this picture?
So you can see the base of the magazine at the bottom of the grip, close to what would be the individual's left thumb. There's that black piece of plastic that extends horizontally across the base of the grip.
And so that's the magazine that you then took out that we see in 79.
Correct.
Okay. And why is the magazine removed?
Well, we have to make the weapon safe, and that's the first step in making it safe, is to remove any more source of ammunition that could feed into it.
Was there a cartridge or a live round in the chamber?
Yes.
So how do you make that safe then?
Well, the only way you can is to manipulate the slide to force the extractor to pull the cartridge out, and the ejector kicks the cartridge out.
Okay. Also in this photo, there was this orange bag, and you had told us that inside of it, we can kind of see the corner here. We see it better in 82. Did you remove an item from that orange bag?
Yes.
And I'm going to show 83, 84. What is that we see there?
That is a gun box that is consistent with the firearm that was laying on the floor.
Okay, so here is Lori's story, that all of this went super fast. Okay, all of this happened within minutes, which is possible for something planned. Allegedly, according to Lori, when she was talking to the Ellie lady in that room, she claimed that Charles started arguing with her and getting loud. Alex and Tylee both came out of the rooms they were sleeping in. Tylee came out with a bat, and Alex had come out. He had no shirt on, and he was pulling up his pants because he had been asleep. So she made it sound like he grabbed his pants and was throwing them on as he was leaving the room because he could hear the yelling. And my thought was, okay, so where was the gun? In his underwear? Because the claim is that he being Charles, pulls the bat from Tylee, knocking her to the ground. And he didn't knock her to the ground because he struck her. It was the force of the tug of war between the bat. She let go of the bat, and because she let go, she fell. So not great, but he didn't outright assault the girl. She fell because she lost her balance. She says that I let go of the bat because mom told me to let go, and I fell. And at that time, he is supposedly waving this bat at Lori and at Alex, okay, who are closing in on him. At that time, she tells Tylee to go get in the car with JJ, and Tylee leaves. So Tylee doesn't see anything else. She goes to sit in the car with JJ. Now, I don't understand where this gun supposedly came from when Alex, who was shirtless and had just pulled up his pants, unless he had his gun tucked in his underwear. I mean, I suppose it could have been in the pocket of his pants, but that looks like a pretty decent sized firearm. So, I don't know that he would have been necessarily carrying that around in his back pocket. So, how was he tussling around on the ground with Charles and this bat, and where did the gun come from? And now we hear that the gun was in the bag and the case. So you mean to tell me he took the time to run to the room, grab this bag, pull his firearm out of the bag, and shoot Charles? Like, that doesn't sound like how a natural chain of events would occur. It sounds like this gun was ready to go. It was armed, it was loaded, and it was close. But the bag in the living room is weird. Unless they pulled it out of the bedroom to take pictures of it, and this is in the bedroom, which is possible, because the flooring looks like it could be different, but that's still weird. Like, he had time to run and get the gun? Is that what supposedly happened? That was tucked in a bag? I don't know.
So consistent with the .45 caliber handgun.
Correct.
And that was inside this orange bag. Was there any live rounds, and I'm going to show you Exhibit 85, also in that orange bag?
Yes.
And a closer up of that, was that another .45 caliber round?
It is.
And so when we say it was live, it hadn't been fired yet.
Yeah, cartridge has not been fired.
I'm going to start then by having my paralegal can take up exhibits 237 or 246. She can approach them with 237 and 246. Do you recognize 237 and 246?
Yes.
And is that the gun and the magazine that we see here in Exhibit 76?
It is.
The gun that was found in that pink room.
Correct.
State will move to admit 237 and 246.
Any objection?
Is Mr. Coons saying that he didn't take those, but he recognizes them from being in evidence? Is that correct?
I think he testified he recognizes them to be the same items from the scene.
He's already been through this. He's not part of that part of forensics. He goes in there to these scenes and he does the mapping. He sees how far the projectiles go. He looks at the evidence. That's his part. Forensics comes in there and they do the actual physical handling of stuff. I don't know why she needed an additional explanation for that. She should have known this already. And this is kind of a theme with Lori as, you know, her own attorney, is she has to be told the same things multiple times. I'm not quite sure offhand what it was that she kept asking the judge during pretrial stuff, but she asked the same series of questions, and he explained to her 5 times the rule. And each time he'd explain it to her, he explained the same thing in sort of a different way to try and get it through to her. And finally he said, I can't explain it to you again. I'm not explaining it to you again. I've explained it to you 5 different times. And he has, I mean, this guy has the patience of a saint. I'm surprised he hasn't thrown his hammer at her a couple times, because she either doesn't listen, which is terrible for a lawyer, or she doesn't pay attention, or she forgets and needs to be told again, which again is terrible for a lawyer. So this is kind of frustrating because she's already been told what his purpose was and what his role is, and she's still asking these dumbass questions.
No objection.
237 and
246.
237 and 246 are admitted.
Now I have my paralegal approach with 247, 248, and 236. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. Foundation.
Do you recognize 247, 248, and 236?
Yes, I do.
And are those what we saw in Exhibit 83, the gun case, as well as in 73, the orange bag that the gun case was in, and hold on. What we see in 85, the single live round that was found inside that bag.
Correct.
State will move to admit 247, 248, and 236.
Any objection?
Just a foundation, Your Honor. If he could give a serial number or something that could authenticate those?
Well, he testified that those were the items that he recovered from the scene, so I guess you can question him about that on cross. Give me the numbers again.
247, 248, and 236.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Oh my god. This childlike way, she only talks sometimes. Not how she always talks, just sometimes. Grinds my gears. Excuse me, Judge, I don't know. I like punch you.
I'm going to show you, as you continued sort of in this hallway, Exhibit 88. Do you, can you put us into perspective of where that is? I'm going to put 19 sort of back up. Where is, what we see, this room with the blue on it, Exhibit 88?
So those 2 doorways would be on the south side of the hallway that leads up to the pink or maroon room. Specifically, the blue one would be the most southwestern bedroom of the home, and then the other doorways to the hall bathroom.
Okay. So again, did you go into room, this blue room and look for any potential items of evidence.
Yes.
So in the room with the sort of child themes on it, did you find anything bloody in there?
No, ma'am.
Any ammunition in there?
No.
In the pink room, we saw the gun. Did you look in the floor of that room to see if there was any blood drops in the pink room?
Yes.
So I'm going to go back 1 second to 87. So on this floor and the bed and around here, did you notice any blood in that room?
No.
No blood swiped across a wall?
No.
No blood on that orange case?
The orange bag?
Correct.
No.
No blood on the black case for the gun?
No.
Or the extra magazines that were in there, any blood on those?
No. None seen.
Okay. So then in the blue room, did you do the same sort of thing? Look to see if there was any bloody clothing, any blood swipes, any blood drops, that sort of thing in there?
Correct. No items of bloody anything was discovered in there.
Okay. And nothing on the floor either?
Correct.
When we go to 92, you said that was the hall bathroom next to it?
Yes.
Do we see that in 93 and 94 here?
Yes.
Did you look in everything, like even the sinks, to see if you saw blood there?
Yes.
Along the countertop to see if you saw blood there?
Correct.
Did you note any bloody items, any that was anywhere in that bathroom?
I did not.
When you were walking down that hallway to those rooms, did you look on the floor there to see if there were any blood drops or blood trails or swipes of blood on the wall?
Yes.
Did you observe any there?
No.
So 98 here, can you put us in perspective of what we're seeing?
So this would be towards the feet of the body, where the hall splits to the kitchen and then to the bedrooms that we were just discussing.
Okay. 99, is this like a lanyard that was hanging on the wall there?
Yes.
So wasn't knocked off or anything?
No, it's where we found it.
And as you go through 99 there, is that how you entered, one of the ways you could enter into the kitchen?
Correct.
And is this sort of a view of that?
Yes.
So in the kitchen, did you look on the floor there to see if there were any blood drops?
Yes.
Along the cabinets to see if there were blood drops there?
Yes.
When you got to the sink, I'm going to put exhibit 103 and then 104. Did you observe a small amount of what appeared to be blood on the faucet itself?
Yes.
Did you look sort of as well in the sink itself to see if there was any blood there?
Yes.
Did you observe any there?
Did not see any visible blood.
Now, when you're going through the house and looking to see if you note any bloody items or any other items of evidence, are you looking in things like trash cans?
Yes.
So was this the trash can in the kitchen, for instance?
Yes.
And did you note any bloody rags or towels or anything thrown in there?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You said that there was also sort of a living area in there.
Correct.
I'm going to put up exhibit 112 to get a better perspective of that. So is this the doorway we were talking about?
Yes.
And so the kitchen here opens up into the living room.
Correct.
Did you look through that area to see if you saw any blood on the floors?
Yes.
Did you observe any?
No.
Did you look through that area to see if there was any blood on any of the furniture or walls or anything like that?
Yes.
Did you observe any of that?
No.
In Exhibit 111, Where does this doorway lead?
That leads back out to the mirrored room, the main room where the body is.
So when we were talking about the two doorways, one sort of directly into the kitchen and the other sort of more towards the end of the kitchen living area.
Yes.
This is what you were talking about.
Correct.
And in Exhibit 113, can we see sort of both of those doorways?
Yes.
Okay. And 114, overall perspective of that?
Another perspective of it, yes.
So throughout this whole area, again, you're looking for anything that might be relevant because you have one chance to document it, correct?
Correct.
When we talk about 115 and we talked about the original layout of the house, is this that front entrance area again?
Yes, it is.
And where are we looking in this perspective?
So you were looking in a north direction.
Where does that head towards?
It heads towards the garage, the master bedroom, and I believe a room that could double as an office.
Okay. So when we go along this wall here that we see in 115, 116, 117, is this the sort of what we would call office or playroom?
Yes.
Okay. Did you look through there, see anything bloody in there?
We looked and found nothing.
Was there like a powder room in this area?
Yes,
And did you search that as well?
it was.
And again, you're looking in sinks and in trash cans?
Correct.
And did you observe in 121, 122, the trash can and toilet and sink, any bloody items there?
No,
Was there a laundry room in this area?
there was.
And I'm putting up 123 and 124. Did you look through the laundry area to see if you saw any bloody items in here?
It was looked through, yes.
So although there's some clothing and some folded towels, none of those had blood evidence on them.
Nothing that stood out with blood evidence, no.
And then again, even looking in the trash cans that we see in 126 and 127,
Correct.
One 128, are we now heading into the master bedroom?
Yes,
129, was there sort of an office set up in there as well, 130?
correct.
And are you, again, looking through the floor, looking everywhere for any items of evidence?
Correct. Anything to indicate that what happened in the other room transferred into this?
Okay. Or any cleanup from after it?
Correct.
As you went through this, did you do the same sort of thing, looking through the floor and walls, 132, 133, for any blood evidence?
Correct.
Did you observe any in the bedroom?
No.
Do you go into the master bathroom and check there as well?
Yes.
The 134, 135. Did you observe any evidence, blood evidence in the master bathroom?
It did not.
And again, checking even the toilet itself as well as the trash can
Yes.
that we see in 137 and 138. So other than the one drop or whatever smear of blood on the kitchen faucet, did you see any other blood evidence at the scene?
No.
Let me put that in a different way. Other than what was around Charles's remains?
Correct. No trails, no swipes, nothing that other than the sink faucet in the kitchen and the area where the body was.
Which there's two reasons why this is important. I think this is where they're going with that. Two very important details. First, that Charles's body was never touched, meaning that there was distance between him and Alex when the shots were fired, but Alex has that wound on the back of his head from allegedly being thwacked in the back of the head by Charles with the bat, but he wasn't bleeding profusely. The blood wasn't, dripping from his head wounds. Bleed really bad. Like, I remember, cutting my forehead, falling off my bicycle, and hitting gravel. And my face had so much blood on it, it looked like it was out of a horror film. I was shocked at how much my face bled. But even hitting the topic, I mean, there's a lot of blood. I mean, I know the face is different than the back of the head, but head wounds bleed really bad. And at the scene, it's strange because at the scene, he has a little towel or a piece of like paper towel that he's holding up to his head. There's a tiny bit of blood on it. You can barely see it on the camera for the body cam. But then in the interview, where you have the camera facing the back of Alex's head, it's like he's got a blood drip mark, almost like he was picking at it or making it bleed more after the fact than during. So there was no blood splatter you would expect from somebody getting hit with an object, like someone gets hit with a bat or hit hard enough, like what she's alleging happened. There should have been blood droplets somewhere. The other point is it indicates there was no attempt at CPR. When the paramedics came in, or first responders came in after the police officers to sort of work on Charles, the testimony from the one the one EMS worker was that he felt the cracking of the chest, which is what happens when CPR is done correctly. And Lori came back with, well, if somebody isn't experienced in CPR, maybe that doesn't happen. And he's like, true, and that could be reasonable, but also this guy is saying there wasn't blood anywhere indicating that Alex had cleaned up or washed his hands or anything after attempting CPR on Charles. So I think that's where they're going with it is two things. Is A, he wasn't hit hard enough to really be bleeding to the point to where, the measure such as shooting was necessary for defense, but also no attempt at CPR, which gives the idea that this was meant to be fatal. They took time between Charles getting shot and before that first 911 call was made from Alex. Well, the only 911 call that was made from Alex. There was no sense of urgency. You need to get here. I shot my brother-in-law. We got into a fight, an altercation. There was no sense of urgency. When he contacted police, he waited 30 to 45 minutes. So a substantial amount of time had passed before a 911 call was even made. Because they wanted him dead.
So you told us that you cleaned up the blood there and you saw that defect in the ground that was consistent, or in the flooring, that was consistent with a bullet strike, correct?
Correct.
When you were looking at this scene, actually I'm going to start with 15, did you note injuries to Charles Vallow himself?
Yes.
On the front of him, where did you note the gunshot wounds to him?
Immediately before the medical examiner arrived, the only visible gunshot wound was in the lower left abdomen area.
Did you learn one was in the chest underneath some of the medical debris?
Yes.
Okay. When you are looking at this scene, are you able to utilize part of your shooting reconstruction training to try to determine any type of trajectory, or if anything is consistent with trajectory based upon the scene itself, items that you are able to view there?
I do try to apply my knowledge of that to the scenes as I go to them and go through them, and with whatever evidence or information comes directly back to me.
Are you relying on, for instance, the location of Mr. Vallow?
That's part of it.
Are you relying on the location of the casings?
That's another part of it, not a major part, but it is another part.
Are you relying on the location of the projectiles?
Yes,
When the medical examiner came, were you also able to see exit wounds on Mr. Vallow?
yes, in conjunction with also the chest wound.
Okay, so when the medical examiner came, you saw a second injury to the front side of him.
Correct.
Where was that approximately?
In the sternum,
So for us, somewhere in,
about the center, maybe roughly the center of the chest.
okay. So and the other one you said was in the abdomen.
Yes.
When the medical examiner was there, where did you observe other gunshot wounds on his back?
I observed another one that would have been just to the left of the spine, and then another one that would have been by the left shoulder blade scapula area.
Okay. Now, given the number of casings, did you start with an idea that there might be 2 shots?
Yes,
Given the number of wounds on Mr. Vallow, did that appear consistent with that theory?
very much so.
So 2 entrances, 2 exits?
Yes.
When you saw the projectile that you recovered, that we see in Exhibit 20, on the side over here, that entered into that baseboard, given the injuries to Mr. Vallow and the projectiles and the location of this, were you able to determine any consistencies of where the shooter may have been when that occurred?
Approximate location, yes.
And how did you do that?
Based on the wounds to Mr. Vallow, the location of where the projectile had ended up, and where the casings were, the working theory at that point was that the firearm ejected the casings to the right, striking the wall where that has the curve there, and bounced back towards the west wall. The projectile would have continued on a relatively straight path and embedded itself in the baseboard at the other end of the room.
So would that have put the shooter somewhere in this area?
Yes.
And so that, to you, seemed consistent with one of the shots having gone through him and ended up what we see in Exhibit 20 over here in the baseboard, Mr. Vallow being somewhere over in this area.
Correct.
Okay. Given the information that you obtained, let me ask you this. Given the information that you saw at the scene there, again, with the casings, the injuries to Mr. Vallow, both to the abdomen and the shoulder, and then after you cleaned up the blood, the damage to the floor underneath the location of his left shoulder, were you able at that point to start, have any concept or have an idea of what would be consistent with where the shooter may have been and where Mr. Vallow may have been for that shot?
Yes.
What did you base that on?
Again, a lot of the factors that have been discussed, the location of the projectile, item number 4, the defect in the floor that was underneath him, the location of the second casing. It was all consistent with the shooter having been at the feet, not necessarily right upon the feet of Mr. Vallow, but in that direction, close enough so that the projectile could, again, bounce off that wall and land on the west wall.
The projectile or the...
Or the casing, sorry.
When you were looking at this scene, I'm going to put 56 up. Obviously, there's no exact, I'm going to move Mr. Vallow this way just to kind of be looking the same direction. Did this defect appear to be in the area of Mr. Vallow's shoulder?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Vallow had been rolled a couple times by the time you cleaned that scene up.
Yes.
So you didn't like stick a rod through him there and see if that worked?
No, that would be inappropriate.
Are you even allowed to do that?
No.
Does a medical examiner frown on that?
Yes, the body is theirs by law.
So you're basically able to look at where he was located and say that that is consistent with being underneath his left shoulder.
Yes, and we did take measurements of the body before it was moved.
All right, so when you measured where the body was and then you cleaned up that blood and measured where that projectile divot was that consistent with where his left shoulder was?
Yes.
Given that information that you had at that time, were you able to draw any conclusions as to whether or not the evidence was consistent with Charles Vallow being laying on the ground when he was shot?
Very much so in the position that you see him. He was, the second shot that entered the abdomen would have been where he was lying.
Did you attend the autopsy itself?
I did.
And when you were at the, can you tell us what it means when you attend an autopsy as a detective?
So as a detective, we go to the medical examiner on the date that they're going to do the autopsy. There is the autopsy suite itself where the doctors and technicians work with the bodies. Observers will be outside of that suite, but able to communicate with the staff. There's a window where we can see everything that's going on. And like I said, we can communicate either by a phone that's on the wall or they'll come around and talk with us. We have the ability to observe everything that transpires. There's even a camera overhead that we can manipulate to get a different view. Say the feet are towards us, we can get the camera to look at when they're working on the head or something like that.
When you were at the medical examiner's office as they were performing the autopsy, did you learn additional evidence that helped support your opinion as to whether or not Mr. Vallow was laying on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen and the bullet exited his left shoulder?
Yes.
What was that additional evidence that you considered when reaching this opinion?
Well, I had asked for specific things for the doctor to include in the examination that would help me with rendering that information. One of them was to measure the location of the bullet strikes on the body, both the entry and the exits. And then I also asked for the use of trajectory rods, if it was available, to help demonstrate the angles of the shots so that I could visibly see everything. They have the unique experience of being able to see the actual damage to the organs as it's passing through. It's not all super clear for me for that part, so the trajectory rods help out a lot.
Having observed the location of the injuries, that measurement, the trajectory rods, did that further support or go against your opinion that Charles Vallow was laying on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen?
It further supported it.
In your opinion, then, can you list all the factors that you rely upon to determine that, or to reach your opinion that Charles Vallow was laying on the floor when he was shot in the abdomen and the shot exited his left shoulder?
The consistencies of a lot of the evidence that I had personally seen. The trajectory rods helped establish that alone, where it shows the entry into the lower left abdomen and then the exit out through the left shoulder blade area. The divot in the floor that was located underneath the body, the projectile that had expended the rest of its energy coming from underneath the body and coming to rest close to the body. there was a lack of stippling that was visible, meaning unburned powder or gunshot residue actually on the skin or clothing that we could identify. So that gave us the fact that the shooter was a bit of a ways away from the body, but the body was firmly on the floor at the time of the shot. There's just no way for the impact on the floor and the exit of the body to articulate anything else with that angle.
After you, let me ask you this. Do you recall how long you were at the scene that day?
I got there about 9 or a little after, and I think we left sometime between 1600 and 1630.
What's that in normal people time?
4 to 4:30 in the afternoon.
All right. Did that sort of end your involvement in processing this whole scene?
The Four Peaks scene, yes.
Your Honor, the state has no other questions for this witness.
All right, cross-examination?
Your Honor, can I have a few minutes to defer with my advisory council? before
Briefly. Yep, briefly.
While she's doing that, I think I caught a snippet of her with this guy the other day, and I misunderstood. So the heart shot came first, and once Charles was on the floor, that's when he delivered the second shot instead of attempting to administer CPR. But when I caught her the other day with this guy, it was when at first I turned it off because she kept referring to Charles as my husband, and it was grating on my nerves, and I couldn't tolerate it at the moment. So I'm like, I'll come back to this later because I was not in the mood. Also, if I remember correctly, one of the reasons she objected to this guy was at first he was in agreement that it was self-defense, but once he looked at the evidence again, he was starting to question the ruling of self-defense and kind of helped kickstart this whole thing.
All right, I need to excuse the jury for just a couple minutes to resolve something. It should only take a few minutes. We'll have you wait in the jury room, and then we'll continue.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to get to the jury coming back in. But yeah, this guy, she's annoyed because he originally agreed that it was self-defense and then took another look at it. Now, keep in mind, this happened December 11th, 2019.
All right, the jury is no longer present. Go ahead and take a short break.
And September 9th and September 2000 or September 23rd, Tylee and JJ disappeared. And the reason there's 2 days is I don't know when they were last seen, but it was Colby who was like, "Where are my siblings? Where's my sister? Mom, he was communicating with who he thought was Tylee, but now it's believed that Lori was the one who was talking to him and made it sound like Tylee was mad at him. And that's why the communication was abruptly ending. But Colby wouldn't let it go. He knew something was wrong.
States Army, Arizona Department of Corrections.
I went a little too far, then I didn't go far enough. I'm just gonna let it go for a few seconds though.
Detective Coons, you were the scene agent that day on scene, is that correct?
Primarily, yes.
And did you work for someone else before Chandler Police Department?
United States Army, Arizona Department of Corrections, a couple other little jobs after I got out of the Army.
Did you work for Gilbert Police Department at all?
No.
And as the scene agent that day, you talked about you were there. Did you write a report about that day?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you write that report?
I don't know the day I sat down to write it. It was shortly after the event.
So close to July 11th, 2019?
Close to it.
Within a week, maybe?
Again, don't recall when I specifically started typing that.
And when you arrived that day, who was there already?
Patrol officers?
Just them?
The fire department might have been there. Alex Cox was there. Other detectives arrived. I couldn't tell you the order of which everybody arrived.
And where did you park?
I parked north of the scene.
And then did you go directly into the house?
No, ma'am.
What did you do first?
We received a briefing of what patrol officers had learned. We learned that there was a body inside the residence, and we came up with an investigative plan.
Who did that debriefing to you?
I don't think anybody specifically ran the debriefing. We, as detectives, gathered around the patrol officers, and they informed us basically of what they had seen and what they had been told.
And who were those detectives with you?
Well, Detective Duncan would have been there with me. Detective Moffett would have been there. I didn't take a roll call of all the detectives there. Possibly Detective Inclin. I don't know.
Okay. And then where did you proceed after that debriefing?
Well, after the debriefing, I provided the information of what I had learned to Detective Kaminsky, who is still back at the police department, and gave him the information necessary to request a search warrant for the residence.
And then what?
We waited.
To get the search warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
To have it issued?
To see if the judge would issue it, yes.
And how long did that take?
I don't believe we got word back from the courts until it would have been probably between 11:30, 11:45, and then we made entry shortly thereafter.
So is it your protocol that you can't enter until the search warrant is issued?
That is what we do once the scene has been made secure, yes.
Okay. And then when you entered, who entered with you?
Myself, the crime scene tech, we were the initial ones. I think Detective Duncan might have come in with us as well, but that would have been the extent of the initial entry.
Do you know the name of the crime scene tech that was with you?
Jordan,
Is that the last name or first name?
the last name.
And then what did you do after that?
Well, after that, we continued to go with our normal process of having photographs taken. I did the lizard Q spheres. I completed getting information necessary for the diagram that was presented, and continued to just do our job.
So is that protocol to do photographs first?
That would be our protocol, yes.
And then what do you do after that? I know that you were searching for the blood in all the rooms. When did that occur?
That occurs after the initial photographs are done, and then we can walk through and look in the particular areas that's been photographed already.
Okay, so the photographs are finished and then you guys kind of walk through.
Or at least finished in an area that we can actually walk through, yes.
Okay. And then when did you set up the tripod after, how long after that?
So the tripod was set up after the area had been photographed. So that way I wasn't interfering with anything. And that way we're not having the tripod in our original photographs.
Right, makes sense. And do you think, so Detective Duncan was with you going through the house?
I believe he was there, yes.
So it was basically the two of you or three of you going through room by room, or were you split up, or how does that work?
We would have divided and conquered a little bit to make the search a little bit more expedient. But that, again, you're slowed to the time frame of what it takes to do the overall photographs.
So the photographs took about how long?
I don't ever look at my watch to see how long it takes because it's a big house, as you're aware. And I let the crime scene tech do their job. I don't push them and tell them that TikTok, there's nothing like that. It's do your job, we'll follow along.
Okay, and you guys started that process at about 11:45?
I think the actual time would have been closer to noon that we would have started that process.
And about how long did it take to go through the whole house, and about how long was that process?
Again, for me, I don't document how long it takes for any particular task because each scene is different. I just focus on doing the tasks. I rarely take a look at my watch to see how much time I'm spending on it because I want to do the job. I don't care about the time it takes.
And you did not pick up any of the evidence that was marked? That wasn't part of your protocol, is to take the evidence into custody, is that correct?
Most of the evidence I did not pick up, correct.
And whose job is that?
We usually defer to the crime scene techs to do that. There are times that we will assist them with doing it depending on what the item is.
So that day, was it Jordan who did that? Was he the crime scene tech that took that evidence?
She would have been the one that was collecting at our direction, yes.
And so you kind of pointed out as the detectives, and then they pick it up and...
Correct, because they're trained how to handle evidence, how to package evidence, how to process. So we work in tandem together. We're the investigative body, and they're the scientific portion of it.
Or as they're called in Bones, squints.
Okay, what time do you think that you, well, let's ask this. After you're done with the photos, and then you're done with checking the house, and all of the evidence is picked up and logged, then what else do you do at the house? What else did you do at the house that day?
Well, you just bundled that up into like tiny little package, but it took a long time to get to the point that you're talking about. So my day pretty much involved the scene. As far as ancillary jobs to go somewhere else or do other things, no, my day was pretty much spent there on Four Peaks.
Correct. Yeah. So, when did you leave the residence then?
We secured from the house sometime between 4 and 4:30 p.m.
And what other tasks did I miss that you accomplished during that 12 o'clock to the 4:30 time?
Oh.
I just don't know what you were doing in there. I'm just wondering.
Well, we identify the the evidence items. We're looking for other evidence items. I am still doing the diagram, so measurements need to be done. We have to wait for the medical examiner to arrive because we can't do anything with the body until they show up. And then once they show up, we pretty much stop with the other projects until we can focus on the body and get the body out of there because there aren't very many investigators for the medical examiner in the county, so we don't want to tie them up longer than we have to. And then we'll resume searching or identifying information, evidence, collecting it, and working our way to a conclusion where we can leave the scene.
Okay. So after searching the whole entire house, did you guys search the backyard at all?
It was searched.
Did you do that, or did someone else do
I
it?
did not.
Who would have been in the backyard searching?
It would have either been another detective or we would have asked an officer to do it.
And what would they be looking for?
Any blood evidence, anything to indicate based upon the information we had of the event that took place inside that house.
So when you made your assessment, you were able to leave after that assessment was made? That everything was accomplished?
Oh, what assessment are you talking about?
That all the evidence was gathered and collected?
That I was satisfied that we had collected what we needed to collect?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
If we could just have Ms. Vallow move her reports away from the camera it's showing.
Oh, is it showing?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's, actually, let's just turn that off until we need it. Thank you.
So you stated earlier that the weapon, the type of weapon that was found was a .45 caliber?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a semi-automatic?
It is.
Okay. How is that different from like a revolver? What's the difference between that?
The build itself, I like to use simplistic terms when I describe what a revolver looks like. Most people are familiar with a Western movie. So the wheel gun, that's a revolver. What you see modern police officers carrying these days are semi-autos. So that's kind of the analogy I give to people that don't know guns.
And what's the difference between when you're shooting a semi-automatic or shooting a revolver, how fast you can shoot? Does that make sense?
The speed on which somebody can shoot is dependent upon the shooter themselves. The skill level they have, the weapon they might be using. There are a lot of circumstances and things that happen to be able to qualify that statement.
Right. And you have taken many gun classes, right, that we heard of?
And I'm an instructor, yes.
And you're an instructor. So when you're taking a gun class, is it common for them to say, is it common that they tell you to shoot center mass? Is that a common term?
That is what we train as police officers, is to shoot center mass. It has the highest probability of guaranteeing a hit on the adversary that you're trying to shoot.
Right. So if you were being attacked, you should point at center mass. Is that correct?
That is what's trained, and because stress can obviously create issues, but yes.
Is it a common term to say to center mass?
No,
In
that
training?
is something that I've heard, but I wouldn't classify it as common.
Would you teach that in your class?
It depends on what class is and what we're actually doing. If it's standard officers, no, I don't tell them to always shoot to center mass, no.
If it was a novice who was like taking a gun class for the first time, would you teach them that?
No.
What would you teach them?
You would teach them to shoot till the threat went away, and that can be with one shot. It can be with more than one shot.
Okay, that's fair. So in this particular gun, the .45, when the shells are ejected, where do they go?
Out and away.
So in this particular gun, do they go to the right or to the left?
I've not test fired this particular gun. I believe that most semi-automatics do eject the casings out to the right. Whether it's high right, low right, I'm not sure. It could be farther forward, it could be farther back. I did not test fire this gun, so I cannot speak specifically to how this particular gun ejects, other than most likely to the right.
But it could go to the left?
No, not the way the ejection port is set up.
So no guns that are .45s could go to the left?
Certainly you could have a left-handed gun set up that it would eject that way, but the way this particular gun is set up, the ejection port dictates which way that's going to go. When the slide cycles back, and that extractor pulls the casing back. The ejector is usually located on the opposite side of the extractor, and that will kick it out of the actual ejection port of the slide.
So for someone like me who doesn't really understand guns too well, you would say that a right-handed gun, they would eject out of the right, but a left-handed gun, they could eject out of the left.
And they're very rare to see.
And do people have left-handed guns? I guess I never really thought about that.
Some people do.
If you're left-handed, you'd want that, I guess. Okay. So in this particular case, when you said in your report that the shells bounced off the wall, they had gone to the right, like they were supposed to. Is that correct?
That is what I was operating off of, yes.
And then they would have bounced to the left.
Yes, because that makes sense.
And they would have landed to the left of my husband. Is that where they were found?
Along the west wall.
Okay. But how close to the wall were they found?
The pictures show where they were found. They're relatively close to the wall, inches away.
I was going to say inches.
Yes.
Not feet, but inches.
Correct.
And would that be a normal trajectory from hitting the wall to where they landed?
I am not surprised by seeing that, yes.
According to how fast they would be going. How fast does a casing come out of a gun? I don't really know.
I've never chronographed a casing coming out of a gun. I've only chronographed bullets. So I have no idea how fast a casing comes out. It doesn't come out with enough force to really hurt anybody.
So there weren't any divots in the wall or anything like that? Because
There could be microscopic divots, but it'd be very difficult to find.
and you didn't find any that were visible to the eye?
Nothing that's caught my eye, no.
So were you there at the time when Alex did the walkthrough?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you were there. Did he describe where he was standing?
Sustained.
Did he show you physically where he was standing?
Sustained.
Was there a wall right next to where he was standing?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for the truth of the matter asserted. I'm saying he observed this person standing in that place.
Well, you can ask him if he observed Mr. Cox standing in that place.
Okay. Did you observe Mr. Cox standing in the room where he told you that the gun was?
I observed him standing in the vicinity that he indicated.
And was that in the hallway or in the main room?
No, I'm going to object to hearsay. It's non-testimonial,
Right.
but it is still hearsay.
If the question is in relation to Mr. Cox showing or recreating or demonstrating, then the objection is sustained.
Where did you observe Mr. Cox standing when he went through the walkthrough to?
Well, that's the testimony that I'm saying is a form of hearsay. So please ask a different question.
I'm trying to understand, Your Honor. So what the witness observed is not relevant?
I didn't say that. Let's do a sidebar.
Okay, I would love that.
This is what I mean by she says things that she doesn't understand. She tries to say it in a different way, and he's trying to explain it to her why. And then she still doesn't understand. This is the problem. Like, in some ways, sure, it's kind of nice having somebody who isn't legal, a lawyer with all the legal jargon, because they use technical words that lay people like jurors might not know, and clarifying things. And an average juror might not know much about handguns versus revolvers and semi-automatics and all of that. So it is kind of, in a way, nice to have someone who is just an ordinary person, in a sense, not Lori, because she's not normal, but in general. But at least have someone who understands and can form that thought process. Well, I can't ask that because Alex isn't here to testify or be cross-examined as a witness. So he can't in any way indicate that Alex told him anything because Alex cannot be cross-examined as a witness. He's dead. So she keeps asking the same thing because she's trying to paint this picture of self-defense. But without Alex here, this guy is just here to show technical things and what is legally based on his job. That's what he does. So
Detective Coons, where would you place the shooter standing in that room?
I would place the shooter in the area of where the curve of the wall was and the kind of the hallway entry area, somewhere in that general area.
So would you have it, what direction would you place him standing? Facing, I mean. Not standing, but facing.
For which shot?
The first one.
The first one in a more northeasterly direction.
And the second?
In a more northern direction with a slight deviation to the east.
So would you have him stepping forward? Is that what you're saying?
No.
What direction would you have him moving?
I didn't say the shooter moved.
You're just saying that he shot from a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you think he was standing in the same location?
I don't know that.
So according to where you put him standing with the first shot, the casing bounced off of the wall to the right and landed to the left.
Correct.
And then where you have him standing in the second shot, the same thing happened.
Approximately, yes.
And how far apart were those casings found?
I don't have the specific measurement of how far apart they were. They were a few feet.
So they're a few feet apart.
Yes.
So if he was standing in the same place, would they be a few feet apart or would they be closer?
It depends on a different amount of things, like how was the gun being held? Was it canted to the side? Was it not? What the angle was. Could the shooter have moved? A little, but it would have been in the same general vicinity.
But you said he didn't move, according to you.
I said I didn't say he moved.
So he could have moved because they were more than a foot apart, the casings found.
A little, yes. Would have been in the same general area.
So he could have taken a couple steps.
Perhaps. Could have slid the body sideways. Anything that you can do to the body, it could have been done in a short area.
And is that common in, I don't know with shooting, is that common with someone to shoot once and then move and shoot again?
Speculation, relevance,
I'll sustain it on speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
Again, objection is to speculation as to when, where, circumstances.
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to speculation.
Let's talk about stippling. The first shot, according to you, had stippling. Is that correct?
No,
It did not have any stippling.
none was observed.
And the second shot?
None was observed.
No stippling was observed.
Correct.
Is that what's in the ME's report?
I believe so.
That there was no stippling? Can I have a minute, Your Honor?
she didn't exactly wait for an answer. Oh, my Lanta. This woman drives me crazy. There's only a few minutes left in this. I'm actually going to do the rest later or tomorrow. Well, the next day, day 3. Because after this, there's been a development in the Kamani Lategue case that I covered earlier today. If you want to check out that video, I do have it up right now. She was a 13-year-old who went missing in
You were observing the
Toledo, Ohio.
autopsy, that Emmy didn't say anything about stippling?
I don't recall any mention about stippling.
And you didn't have a discussion with him about it?
We would have if he'd observed any.
And so if he said that to someone else, you would be surprised?
I don't know what he had in his notes. I didn't author his report.
Can you describe stippling for us? What that is?
Sure. It's basically a combination of particles that come out from behind or follow the projectile as it exits the barrel. A lot of times it's partial burned or unburned powder, and it's a short distance phenomena, so the person has to be extremely close for the pattern to actually present itself and the particles embed in the clothing or the skin.
So if stippling was found, how far away would the gun have to be from the victim
That depends on the gun.
on this .45 semi-automatic?
I am not an expert on the stippling patterns. That is something that we would have to send to the lab for. And what they would do is they would test it with witness panels at different distances to give that information.
Is there an estimate?
That's where it would come in. Usually the medical examiner, if they observe stippling, will give an estimate of close or contact.
So would you be surprised if he said 2 to 4 feet?
If that's what he says.
That if there's stippling, then the gun would have to be 2 to 4 feet.
It's possible, but I wouldn't hold my hat on that, no. I would have to have the gun tested for that.
Okay.
Is this a good spot to break for the evening?
Sure, Your Honor.
I mean, I'm not cutting you off. If you want to ask a few more questions, that's fine.
Nope, that's fine.
All right, we'll take our evening recess. Members of the jury, please remember the admonition. I'll remind you to specifically avoid any outside information, any information about this case outside this courtroom. And we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
Again, thank you for hanging out with me, and we will continue with day 3 at a later time.